Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Sunday Live, the Writing for Peace. We have the great fortune of having Jahman Hill with us tonight. I'm really excited about it. And we will start out with a poem by another poet. And tonight I'm reading from Only Bread, Only Light by Stephen Kusisto. He's on the panel of advisors for our organization and a wonderful, wonderful poet and human. Only bread, only light. At times, the blind see light, and that moment is the Sistine ceiling. Grace among buildings. No one asks for it. No one asks. After all, this is solitude. Daylight's finger. Blake's angel. Parting willow leaves. I should know better. Get with the business of walking the lovely, satisfied, indifferent weather. Bread baking on Arthur Avenue. This first warm day of June, I stand on the corner for priceless seconds. Now, everything to me falls shadow. That's from Only Bread, Only Light by Stephen Kusisto. Now, on to Jahman Hill. Jahman Hill is an award-winning poet, playwright, and professor. In 2018, Jahman claimed the title of third best slam poet in the world. And in 2019, he wrote, produced, and starred in an award-winning one-man show, Black Enough, which played off-Broadway. Jahman Hill has become a sought-after poet, internationally. His poetry videos have garnered millions of views online, and I know I racked up several of those numbers. They're amazing. Jahman is a professor at the University of Alabama, where he received master's degrees in both communication studies and women's studies. Welcome, Jahman. Please, everybody, welcome Jahman.
Thank you for having me.
Very excited. We start out every reading about the same. So if anybody's listened to some of the other ones, it's the same question, or I try to if we remember. And that is, can you tell us about an influential book or writer from your youth?
Yes, definitely. When I think about influential writers, the first book series that I really invested in, beyond Harry Potter, because I was very invested in Harry Potter, but due to my practicing of magic at my church, where my dad was the pastor, I had to discontinue my reading of Harry Potter for a while. The book and series Aragon, by Christopher Paolini, which it was so much fun. It was a big book. I loved ooh, big book, a lot of pages. I can read it all. And it was such an amazing book that talked about dragons and magic and this idea of fantasy. And that book, along with, I'm going to call it a book for the purposes of this question. The mixtape No Ceilings by Lil Wayne, which came out in 2009. It was the first time that I would always been a huge fan of rap music, but I memorized every word to every song, and I looked at the song differently. I was looking at it from the literary perspective, and like how much he was able to do with the lines that he was writing, and it inspired me in terms of how I wrote, even to this day. So Christopher Paolini in the Aragon, the Inheritance Cycle, I believe is the proper term for the cycle. Like I just read the books as they came out, and I was like, ooh, another one's coming out, another one, another one. And then the No Ceilings mixtape by Lil Wayne are two incredible writers in Paolini and Wayne. And they both had a huge influence on me growing up.
Can you recite some of Lil Wayne for us from that passage?
Yes. So I would definitely say, let's see which lines I wanna so my favorite Lil Wayne line ever from there was, and it's funny because I didn't do any of the activities Lil Wayne did, but he said, "Don't F with me because right now I'm higher than Captain Kirk." And I was like, I get it. Because Captain Kirk is in space. And it was one of the coolest lines. Let's see. In my other favorite line or favorite song, um, he said, "I have 2 bottles of goose, that's geese," in this song called "I Got a Feeling." And I did, and at my, and I was 15 at the time. I did never had consumed alcohol before, and I had to look up what goose was.
Mhm.
And I was like, "Oh, that is so cool!" To like 2 bottles of goose, that's geese. Like I'm like the clever wordplay that Lil Wayne
Yeah.
was able to partake in, and the way that he built all of these different similes, metaphors, double entendres. Like he would just be flipping all of these words and these ideas on their head, and he would just be talking about his life. And I was like, that's so cool that he's not trying to like, conform to anything, but he's utilizing these literary methods and standards, right? That
Mhm.
we are constantly talking about, but is able to use them in his own way, to where you can literally sit in an English class and you can study Lil Wayne the same way that you can study I can't even think of any because I was never in poetry classes growing up. I'm like, I've never read poetry growing up. My first poetry
Mhm.
book I read was actually until probably my senior, my no, my first year of graduate school, when I actually read
Mhm.
a book of poetry. And before then, my only introduction to poetry was hip hop lyrics. And I saw the connection when I started reading poetry, like, I know that from where
That's
Lil Wayne did this, or Nicki Minaj did this. Like all of these writers that, without even knowing, like I have been influenced by growing up.
mhm. So let's hear some of your work. And what do you have first to perform or read for us?
So I have a plethora, I have a slew of poems I have all together right here and in my head. And I wanted to
Mhm.
start with one of my more recent works, which kind of speaks to my influences of both Lil Wayne and Christopher Paolini in this idea of fantasy. So this poem is called Catch a Wave. It's after another rapper, Tobe and Wigwe, who recently has become very popular throughout, I don't know, America. I don't know what age group all listens to Tobe and Wigwe, but his
Mhm.
song Arrest the Killers of Breonna Taylor was a very, very popular song, one of the big songs of 2020.
I think I saw that on Instagram. Yeah.
Yes, yes, he's incredible.
Yes. Yes. Mhm.
You are light, day breaking through the clouds, be holy. You was born that, born nappy, born brilliant, born street, born gold, born wave, no cap, born kneeling, born bended knee, born fighting, be holy. Angelic, ancestral, athletic, amazing, born black, and you black, and you black, and we black, and we black, and that's beautiful. On moms, on pops, on pipes between schools and prisons that we busted, we trusted in our melanin, we better swim. In every wave we caught, in every way we brought, in every wave they sought, they want our shades, they taught all us to hate our crop, but we grow crowns. Where to the afro can't keep us down. And all the haters they is clowns. In our wave they do drown. And we be holy. We be holy. We be born different, built different, build different. Empires for our children and their children. So speak life, speak right to my community. I give them my light because they believe in me. We flourish. Stay blooming. Stay planting seeds. Stay uplifting. Stay gifting. Stay family. Be holy. Be excellent. Be a testament. Be loving. Seek sick. Be they medicine. You better win. I believe that you better win. Be a wave, catch a wave, and you better swim. Be holy. Be holy. And look, may your streets be paved in gold. Pray your whole hood make it home. Pray your streets be paved in gold. May your whole hood make it home. So that's Catch a Wave after Tobe and Wigwe.
That was fabulous. Fabulous. Repetition, assonance, alliteration, all of it. It was, you're yes. Yes. You've talked about some of your influences. And I was wondering, and I ask it related to different genres, but when you sit down, do you know, or when you get an idea, or I listened to some interviews and I can't remember exactly what was said, but how you get inspiration and what you might, where you might go from there. But do you know it's going to be spoken word, or do you know it's going to be on the page? Is there a difference for you?
So it's interesting now because as I've grown as a writer, I think of things in visuals. So I'm even when I think of it on the page, I think of it visually. So everything that I create is multi-medium in a sense. That means I'm writing it and I'm like, okay, how's this going to look on the page to the reader? How's it going to sound to the listener? How's it going to look to the viewer? And in this way, most of the poetry I create today has a certain look on the page, has a certain look when I'm performing it on a stage. And then I have a team of videographers, my best friends, we all do video work actually, and we create visuals for it. So that poem I actually just shared was the beginnings of my short film that I released for a short while with the Alabama School of Fine Arts, and will be re-releasing at a later point. But it was my first foray into, okay, I have this poetry and I want it to be a film. And I don't want the film to just be me saying poetry the whole time. So literally the film opens up with that poetry. And if you read the script itself is poetry, but the script itself is simply talking about the visuals that we will see on the screen. And it's like I take that, I give it to my videographer, my sound people, and we talk through how we turn that into a visual. But I'm always thinking of those, I guess, as one. When the idea pops up in my head, I'm like, page, stage, screen. That's kind of, I'm thinking in all three avenues. Most times I'm coming up with ideas these
Infinite possibility from the beginning.
days. Yes, from the beginning. Sometimes it pops up in my head as one or the other, or one of those three, and I'm like, okay, so how does it work in these other realms? Like, how do I get this to look or be on the page as I want it to? How do I get it to look on the stage how I want it to, or on the screen? So it's because we consume all types of art, right? We love to listen to music. We love to watch television. We love to read. So I'm thinking of all of those things and like, how can what I'm creating fit those different
Mhm. Yes. As I move through the world as a writer, I'm a letterpress printer and a woodblock carver. So I'm
mediums?
continually thinking about those interactions, and kind of like William Blake on the page, and how they marry and wed on the page, or there's a different word I want right now, but to create another. It's something
Mhm.
better than other, and what you're creating takes it to a whole new level. It like, it's not writing and it's not performance. It's magic and it's power. It's like power when I see you perform. It's what comes through. So
I think of it in a way of well, I never want to tie it down. That's the way I think of it, and it's actually how I think of blackness. And I have a poem actually that I'll share after I give you this response that will kind of fit um this idea. But a lot of times growing up, and it was one of the things I realized too with the students that I was working with a few years ago that launched my, I guess, idea of black enough. I would ask people like, what makes you black? And we would tie it to oppression. Like, oh, well, we dealt with slavery, or we're dealing with racism. and this is what makes us Black. And one of my goals was to say, how do we shift that perspective of saying that while all of these things are true, what makes us who we are does not have to be the oppression that we face. And from that, I came up with this idea of the flourish, that Black people are infinitely possible beings. And what makes us who we are is our ability to do any and everything. Like if we're able to set our mind to it, we're able to do these things. And we simply called it the flourish. And from that idea of, okay, so Blackness, it can't be defined, it's defined by its indefinability. I started looking at everything that I approach in the same way. So when I say I'm a creative, right, my poetry does not just live on the page or just live on the stage. There is no just. It lives in both and and more. And taking that approach, I feel like it allows us as creatives to really grow in the type of art we produce and how we even view the art. The same way that you were talking about, like seeing how the wood carving and your writing, have similarities in how they both are realms of the creative process. And with that, I want to share this poem. Every year I try and define the flourish, purposefully to no avail, um, because it surpasses definitions, and I'm constantly redefining it. And this poem, the flourish as defined. Let me see if on 422, and this poem was written on in 2019. Actually, I want to do the flourish as defined on April 7th. They're all fun, but I want to do the flourish as defined on April 7th. I've defined it a few times. All right. To answer the question, what is the flourish? The answer is yes, both and. The flourish defies any definition, and I do mean any. Fixated on fixing the flourish to one spot, I flourish like freedom. Flourish like faith, like flourish like fire from a flame forged in phenomenal spell with an F, because I flourish like failure. Like I fail, freely, falling, limbs flailing or fleeing, I flourish like Friday. Double features my flourish, no fiction foretold, I flourish fact. My flesh flourish, pretty flower, I flourish finagle, filet fishes flung from fingertips, I flourish flight, forgiveness, form of futures forgotten, flourish formaldehyde, frogs and foxes and pheasants and flourish feeling, I flourish furniture with the plastic wrap and flowers, I flourish flowers. Lest you forget, I flourish fountain, flourish fried foods and fruits and fritters, flourish flippantly, fluently, frequently, fervently, friendly, fastidious, flourish, florally flashing, flashy flamingos, flourish for nobody but myself. Lest you find, then I flourish for your fine self, flourishing fabulously, flourish femme, flourish mask, flourish 40 days, 40 nights of fury, and flurries of fireflies, fractured faces still flourish. Whether you fix into finta or finna flourish, flourish regardless, family. Focus and flourish regardless.
That was fabulous. Fabulous. I like how you have it defined on different days, different versions. Yes. Do they change much between them?
Oh, yes, yes. And I'm going to read the next one since you asked that question.
Good.
I feel like that's a great segue. That was the flourish defined on April 7th, which was the first attempt at my defining of the flourish. And then 15 days later, I defined the flourish differently. And this was actually part of a series that I wrote called April. Both of these poems come from. As we know, April is National Poetry Month. And every now and then, not every year, but every now and then, I'm like, I'm going to write a poem every day for National Poetry Month. And the idea was writing affirmations. So of course I found myself writing a lot about the flourish, and the affirmingness that was. So this is the flourish defined on 422. Fill a room with melanin and see if it don't become bouquet. See if it don't burst all through everything and wrap around the sun chloroplast, just a grinning all green and bright colors in ultrafly we photosynthesize and then a mug. I don't even know what that means, but fill a room with melanin and see if it don't turn prairie in the spring. All sunlight and daughter glow and grand shine. Stems and leaves and thorns and blood and ashy elbows and swimming and hooping on concrete till you got holes in your socks and sweat and sneaking kisses and dust and ribs and dust and ribs and dust and ribs and fill a room with melanin and see if it ain't eaten before the apple. In fact, Eve grabs the apple in all her magic and turns it into apple bottom jeans. Adam, with all his magic, transforms apple into boots with the fur. Adam and Eve get low and they never feel inty pain. Fill a room with melanin, and I still love you, and you still love me. And we don't know what love means, but I go to sleep at night with your skin on my eyelids. I dream you open and creating and loving freely, no limits. I lament the nights I tried to pull you into my orbit when you waltz with galaxies, and I can only hope to meet a star. Fill a room with melanin and call the room heaven. Call the room haven. Call the room holy. Call the room and see if God don't answer. Call the room and call the calling a prayer. See the room and call the sighting a miracle. Feel the room and call the feeling a blessing. Fill a room with melanin. Just fill the room. Fill it with melanin. Watch it bloom. That is
You might get tired of me hearing me say that, Jahman, but several things are coming to mind for me, and one of them is I'm so grateful you came here because with us. We are a teaching and advocacy organization, and people use our videos, instructors use our videos that we'll post of this online. So there'll be exposure that way, and more people will be familiar with your work. But your importance today for young people. I taught at a community college for about 4.5 years, and I wish you would have been there because I would have conned you, bribed you, whatever I could to get you into my classes because you're so necessary. You're so necessary. Your voice and what you're doing and your message and the melanin in the room and the beautiful presence. And Robert that you met before the reading, and as well as in my notes, that the flourish, the idea that Black people are infinite possible beings, absolutely effing yes. I shouldn't cuss because it is, but yes. At the same time, can you tell us about maybe some projects or things that you're doing with your own students to build this flourish?
Yes, and I'm so glad that you asked about that because we currently and the reason I actually started writing poetry, well, when I started thinking of it in my head as poetry, because when I was in middle school I was writing raps, and I was like, that's not poetry, that's hip hop, not knowing. But my friend Eric Marable Jr. said, hey Jahman, you should try writing poems. That's whenever people ask me for the story, that's it. Yeah, he said I should try writing poems, and here we are now, some 7 years later. And Eric is still my best friend. And we co-founded an organization, the Flourish Alabama. And that's how we're working with most of our students today. I teach at the University of Alabama. I teach online. I don't get as much interaction with the students. I also teach at a community college, Lawson State Community College. And right now, of course, it's virtual. I started that the week of COVID. I believe the last year, about a year ago today, actually. My first time in the classroom with students, I met them for one class and never saw them again, which is crazy to think. So I've been working virtually there, but with our students that we work with to Flourish, that's literally the work that we're doing at Birmingham City Schools. This last year, our very first class, it was the same thing. We met with a class, had, I believe, one meeting. I believe it was like March 10th of last year or around then, our first meeting, and then nothing else after that. And we had to switch everything to virtual, but the kids enjoyed us so much that they're like, no, we want to bring them back to do some of the Zoom programming. So we started doing spoken word workshops with the kids, and we talked to Eric, he does all of the curriculum, and we are like, how can we make virtual programming for students? So we brought back this ye old poetry slam from 10 years ago, called Word Up. It's done throughout cities throughout the country, but we had not done it in Birmingham in about 10 years. We brought that back, did it all through Zoom, worked with 4 high schools. We had them saying affirmations every day. We would open up every class with affirmations, which I will be saying to y'all a little bit later, those affirmations that we work with the students. But we started off like, okay, we're going to teach them poetry and performance. And we taught them how important their voice is, because that's what's really the goal for us with the Flourish, is recognizing, like, yes, you are infinitely possible. Your words have value, have meaning, and have importance, and you should speak them. You should present yourself how you want to be presented, right? Because a lot of times we feel like, okay, I'm entering this space with these people or this thing, so I got to talk a certain way, or I got to move a certain way. And I always told my students, you don't got to do that. You don't have to do that. The same way that I'm teaching y'all now. Y'all see how I talk right here? I talk everywhere. Like, I get into these spaces, these predominantly white spaces, and they have to respect me, because even though I'm talking like how I talk, I'm still providing them with the information, right? I'm still getting my point across, and they're able to see that even though they might not have historically seen the way I act as intelligent or the way I look as intelligent, I make space, right? I know my value, and I'm very much aware of that, and y'all should be aware of that too. So last semester we did the poetry program, and this semester I'm so excited. We launched this thing called cell phone cinema, where we're literally working with students in both high schools and middle schools throughout Birmingham to create 1-minute films using their cell phones. And we work with them starting off with basics of cinematography, and we have professional cinematographers from across the country come in and talk to the students. Then we teach them screenwriting. We have screenwriters out of LA who come in because everything's Zoom, and we're currently working through our screenwriting portion, where they're learning about, how do you write a script? How do you develop it? Then we're bringing in professional video editors to talk to them about, once you've shot everything you want for your film, like, how do you edit it together? How do you do that with a limited budget? How do you partake in guerrilla filmmaking? And the whole theme is capturing the culture, 2020, and how they felt about 2020, and what were stories that they wanted to tell. Excuse me, sorry about that. Keeping in mind that what they create and everything that they create isn't important, because they are creating the history books of tomorrow, right? And we want them to think like, you have that power to do that, to create that. And that's what's important for the students. So cell phone cinema, creating those 1-minute films, is one of the huge things that we're working on right now with the Flourish Alabama. And I'm gonna read this poem, and then I want to do those affirmations. But this poem,
That sounds like a life-changing project. Absolutely life-changing project to bring those different people together and provide that access. So kudos, fantastic.
it's all multi-medium. If you know, I use the word multi-medium so much. I'm like, okay, let's like figure out, you like to write? okay, how can we collaborate with someone else on a project? And it's all building these ideas of collaboration. And what I feel like, because we have a lot of times we have certain stigma around the city of Birmingham, and the goal is, we want to give students the opportunity to change that. It's like what we tell them every day is like, you already have it in you. Our job is to, like, the seeds are already there. We're here to nurture and to help you grow into what you're already built to become. You don't need anything necessarily from us. Like, we're here to nurture and help you grow. We often think of education like you're dumping information into people, right? And that's not what it is. Education is the drawing out of something that's already there. It's like you already have that flourish. We're just here to help you draw it out. And
We
this
have
poem. Oh, there's a question. Oh, yes.
Are you from Alabama, and who helped nurture you? Who helped nurture this in you? Great question.
Yes. Yes, I love this question, and thank you to whoever asked it. I'm like watching from my phone, so I can't see the chat and the camera at the same time.
I'm not sure if you say Tara or Tara, but
Okay. Thank you, Tara. Tara. However, thank you so much. Um, I was born in Rochester, New York, raised in Kansas, military and pastor family. So I moved around a lot. I'm used to traveling. And since 2014, my entire career as a writer has been in Alabama. So my identity as a writer has been tied to me being in Alabama. Those who have helped nurture me, definitely my parents were such a huge influence for me. My mom and my dad, and then I have 11 siblings. And they have all been great nurturers for me. And especially during my formative years, my family and my church played a huge role, which is why you see themes of religion, spirituality, not as much religion as much spirituality um in my work, because I also have, like, the way I view religion might be slightly different than historically how religion is. So that's a whole nother conversation, which is a great conversation. But yeah, those are the people who primarily nurtured me in my upbringing. Thank you for that question. And this is Iron. So this poem specifically talks about this idea of nurturing, and specific to Birmingham. I am convinced that somewhere in Birmingham, Alabama, there is a child with hands like elevators, but no building to rise in. No resources to help them scrape the sky. This child, with a voice like your favorite dream, can't afford to wake up because the city is still snoring, and money don't grow on sleep. Money don't go in the black neighborhoods. Money reroute to Mountain Brook, to the summit, the new stadium. But this child, with hopes like glass slippers, is transported through broken roads, on broken buses, to broken schools, with wonderful football programs. And sometimes I wonder, what if we invested in them? Why try to grow roses from concrete when we can plant a garden when the harvest is there? Children with minds like marigolds, hearts like wings, each beat a sun rising, for they are stars. But we train them to expect an obit before planets can orbit. These kids could guide solar systems, each satellite a revolution. I am convinced that somewhere in Birmingham, Alabama, there is a galaxy in waiting, with arms like roses and concrete resolve, and the city slumbers for now.
wonderful. Um, some of the images in that poem may even speak to this question that was posed. The question is, it's a comment and question. No one has infinite possibilities. Black people are limited by racism and oppression. Historically, they have had to find literary, rhetorical, and historical means to make their political, social, and cultural points. How do you deal with this reality in the writing of your poetry and the teaching of your students? Isn't your idea of writing based on a fiction? And this is from Phil. Phil Richards. He's with our organization.
Yeah, so
That's a
I
big
would
question.
say that oh no, yes, this is an excellent question. And I think that one of the way that I would answer that is we are rooted in infinite possibility. And because of that, this idea of the reality of things uh, is based a lot of times on the history as we have understood it. So when we look at history and we see like ideas of oppression and racism, black people and people in general existed before that. So to look at an experience solely or coming or existing without the idea of racism is to limit what you could possibly do as a writer or as a creator. So the way that I like to think of it too is we create or write the futures that we want to see. And one of the big parts about that is if we can't imagine ourselves outside of these things, then we can't escape these things. For we look at the genre of Afrofuturism, for example, and I tell people all the time, a slave writing a book where black people are human in America would be considered Afrofuturism in the 1600s. But without them imagining themselves in that place, they are not able to get there. And I think a lot of times we constantly tie ourselves back to these ideas of racism or sexism or different versions of oppression. But if we can't imagine ourselves outside of that, or if we can't imagine ourselves overcoming that, or that future can exist, or that past existed, then we find ourselves stuck in the present. So a lot of times, and when I say present, I you can trace present back all the way to the beginnings of America in the 1600s. Like you can trace our present to our current understanding of history as it has Eurocentrically been kind of developed, because our understanding of history is very Eurocentric in the sense that we're like, okay, this is when things began, this is when things ended. But as we're constantly learning, those things are subjective. And what we look at as reality, especially with this age of information, is subjective. So that's how I would respond to that question. And I thank you. That's a wonderful question.
That's a great question and a generous answer. Yes, thank you. Thank you. There aren't any other questions right now. There might be another one that comes up. But what would you like to read next or perform next?
Okay. Yes. So what I would like to read next, I think that even looking at that question, it makes me think of this poem specifically dealing with ideas of possibility. And I haven't gotten to dive into my form bag today, so I'm going to take the time now to dive into my form bag. One of my favorite um, forms is sestina. In this poem is another one where we're talking specifically about history or oppression or narrative, and how do we redefine it. So I will explain it a little bit more after I read the poem. But I'm just gonna start by reading the poem. It's called Sestina for them Sanford boys. Sestina for them Sanford boys. Love letter to Grandpa Ricky Philander, my grandfather, and Trayvon Martin, or Sam Stina. See this boy with Skittles and iced tea, alive and living. There's this wonderful town called Sanford. See, my grandfather from there, he was this boy, that kept his hair short and hung in hoodie. A colorful name, sounded bright like Skittles Philander, sweeter than Southern iced tea. He be walking through the neighborhood alive and living. Black boys in Sanford work root back alive. Carry aunties for middle names. See, Ricky Mama pulled a knife over iced tea, and Philander made a world for this boy. Call it escape, this castle with Skittles, garden of possibility in hoodie and living. Sanford turned circus splendor in hoodie. Witchcraft turned wisdom, turned family alive. Rick Philander be the cool cat with Skittles, carry rainbows because he survived the storm. See, my grandfather's 60-some and still this boy. In a hoodie with Skittles and iced tea and living, dancing. Don't spill a drop of iced tea, slide electric boogaloo, black boy hoodie, my grand Philander, always been this boy. Arthritis hands texting emojis alive to show love like them Sanford boys. See Ricky smile, be sugar rush with Skittles and living. Got me feeling I can walk anywhere with Skittles, break all the rules, all while sipping some that iced tea. Black children run as far as the eye can see. We all celebrating life inside this hoodie, all because this boy with auntie name was alive. And auntie magic made a home inside this boy and living. So we walking down the street, right? And we see this boy looking about 14, walking with Skittles, and we ain't nan seen someone so alive, so Philander. Ricky with iced tea, name like sitcom, crown made of hoodie. He beat the brakes off this rent-a-cop watchman, see, and living. My Gramps still alive, and he's still this boy. And some of y'all don't see this boy with Skittles, a heart, and iced tea, still alive in hoodie and living, but I do. He right here. I'm right here and living. Tell me what about this skin ain't the flourish? Tell me what about these bones ain't survival? Ain't all I woke up like this? If there ain't no God, then how you gonna explain all this melanin popping, all this sunshine, all this us? If there ain't no God, how you gonna explain my baby sister, her heartbeat, her wit? How you gonna explain my grandmother's laugh and my grandfather's miracle? How you gonna explain all this happiness? See, Lucille Clifton once said, God is a friend standing in between what I've been told and the trouble I've seen. Find God in the gap between knowledge and understanding. Name it what you want. Just name yourself enough. Name yourself worth living, because you have always been enough. You have always been. And this poem, like I mentioned, it's a sestina, sestina for them Sanford boys. Trayvon Martin and my grandfather are actually from the same town. And when we think of these histories that we have, and what they mean for us, they can be a part of us, but they don't necessarily have to define us. So in this story that we see, I tell the story of my grandfather as Trayvon Martin. And yes, there is a history that is tied there, right? But it does not have to define the story that I then tell. I tell a story of redemption where my grandfather is still alive because my grandfather is alive, right? He still is here. So I'm able to take reality. I can root myself in reality in a way, but then I can walk beyond it. And that walking beyond allows us to talk about things such as accountability, things such as social justice, things such as reparations. Because when you think of it, those, you cannot find solutions if you don't think that a solution is possible. So if we can't imagine a world outside of racism or outside of of those tragedies, then how do we create a solution? Right. Exactly. Exactly. Imagining the future that we want to see. So even with that Sestina, I broke rules. That Sestina, instead of like having 6 words, I had 6 phrases and I added a 7th. I played with the traditional Sestinas. First line is 7 syllables. Next 5 or 10. I played a little bit. I would jump over my 10 every now and then just to play with it. And then I ended the Sestina after my tercet, I believe it's called, with 3 lines. After that, I added an ode to Lucille Clifton to finish it off. So after the tercet, we had like a epilogue of sorts.
Yeah.
And all of these things to show, yes, we're rooted in something, right? We're rooted in and not even rooted in a sense like I am rooted in racism, but we acknowledge like there's some sort of reality here, but we also acknowledge there's something beyond, and it's
Yes.
in the beyond that we can really start to get into like the work, because there's a lot of social justice work that has to happen. And what I really hope people don't take away from stuff like this is, oh well then, why do we talk about slavery, or why do we talk about, no, that's not the that's not the point. The idea is, by imagining these futures, it allows us to say, well, there is something we should fight towards, there is
Mhm.
something we should push towards, there is something we should move towards. And in seeing your infinite possibility, and in seeing, yes, you can do that, because nobody has told you you can't yet. That's one of the most beautiful things about kids, right? Before somebody has told them you can't do that. I wouldn't have written my first book if I would have listened to people, or I wouldn't have written my first poem. I've never taken a poetry class. Now I'm the director of this organization called Poetry University. We teach poetry to people across the country, right, or across the world actually, internationally. But that shouldn't be possible, right? It shouldn't be possible. You've never taken a poetry class. I produced my first film, my one-man show, which went off Broadway and won awards. All of us were our first time doing any of that, but we were able to do it because we weren't listening to like, we weren't gonna listen to what we can and can't do as a bunch of young Black kids from in Alabama. We weren't gonna listen. We were just gonna do what we. And when you eliminate that defining, it
Mhm.
allows you
Mhm.
to really push yourself and push your limits and your boundaries.
Yes. William Blake, I think it's Mind Forged Manacles. Yes.
Hmm.
Yes, that mind. Yes. Well, that's I have so many different directions my head wants to go right now, and I'm going to let it right. Well, I was just like understanding our past, but not just setting it aside. Understanding our past well enough to take what's important moving forward, because you have to take pieces of your past to understand who you are as you're blazing this flaming trail of where you want to get to, and you are doing it so creatively and beautifully, and in such meaningful ways. Yes, we have about 4 minutes to take us to 6 o'clock. We can go, or the Pacific time here, but we can go after 6 o'clock by a little bit. But I'd like you to read one more thing, and then if that's okay, and then I say thing, one more writing or performance, and then we have an announcement from Robert, the editor, and then we'll open it up so people can say hello or ask a question. We do a little after party for a few minutes. So,
Yes, perfect. Well,
okay.
then, of course, I want to end with something I mentioned earlier, those affirmations. These affirmations are things that we have the students say every workshop that we do with the Flourish. It actually comes from our one-man show. We snuck it in there. It wasn't supposed to be part of the show, but the day of, we kind of thought through them. I gave them to my director, Eric. Of course, he's involved in everything. He was the director of the one-man show, and our co-director, Christian Hatcher. We didn't want to tell him, because Christian's job was to make sure, that we were on time, doing everything correctly as planned, and so we did not tell Christian. Contacted my lighting director, Z, was like, Z, I'm making these changes. This is what we're gonna do with the lights. Told our sound person, Imani Williams, Imani, this is what we're doing with the sound for the show. Let my other co-director know, Alexis Simmons. And of course, I kind of figured out how to incorporate that with the choreography So shouts out to my choreographers as well, Victoria Hurst and Chandler Brown. That's just a fun way to mention everybody who was involved on the project. And these are the affirmations that came from that we snuck into the show. So I want everybody to just take a deep breath in through your nose, out through your mouth, in through your nose, out through your mouth, and repeat after me. I am worthy. I am necessary. I am loved. I am healing. I am the healing. I am healed. My being is a blessing. My being is a blessing. My being is a blessing. I am the sky and more. I am the sea and more. I am the most and more. I am limitless. I am forgiven. I am forgiving. I am hope. I am regardless. I rise regardless. I am the uplift. I am the flourish. I am enough. I am alive. Somehow, some way, if death was supposed to be at my doorstep by now, they must be running late, because I am alive. Thank y'all so much.
That's wonderful. You are just a beautiful person, and thank you so much for being willing to spend time with us.
Thank y'all for having me.
So very grateful. I'm going to, and so people can talk with you directly. What we'll do is, Kyler, can you please unmute Robert? Robert, are you unmuted yet? Let's see, you still with us?
Okay, there. It's just an announcement. Writing for Peace publishes an anthology twice a year. And the one we have this year is Letters from the South to the World. The guest editor is Adriana Paramo. And I would encourage anybody who's watching, including Jahman, thank you, to submit something.
Yes.
I'm putting the information on right now.
Thank you.
And
the deadline is April 1st.
Okay, let me look in the chat on that. My camera will disappear for a split second, but I want to just, okay. Dovetails.
Super. Thank you, Robert. And let's see. One moment.
Okay.
Yes.
Got it.
And just having quick exchange with my tech person here. So we should, in just a moment, he'll let us know when you have the chance to unmute yourselves, where you can try and see. And then Kyler, if you could also switch the host back sometime. And so you should have the ability now to unmute yourselves. if you want to try, so you can say hello. Is that working? Anybody want to say hello?
Hello, hello.
Oh, hi, how are you?
I'm doing good. Is this it sounded like that was Phil Richards?
Yeah, uh-huh,
Nice to meet you, Mr. Richards.
absolutely. It's good hearing you.
Of course.
Anybody have any questions? Ann, are you unmuted there? Yep, you're.
I'm unmuted. I have nothing to say except this was the best thing for my heart and soul in a long time. I've been around a while and I have been fortunate to know and sometimes have as friends amazing Black and other writers and people. And I will admit that I get frustrated and depressed, particularly among some white liberals and progressives who seem to me to want to insist to Black youth that they have no chance. In a way, that's how I hear it. And everything. I've been a lifetime student of history since about age 6. It's a thing I've always read. It informs all of my understanding. So I think I have a sense of your wonderful parents and where you're coming from, and that's such a great message. Your reading of history is so absolutely essential. I've heard many people, including African Americans, give that message, but I've seen it refuted and tromped on, particularly by a lot of white, well-meaning people who need to know that Black kids have no chance because they can save them. Whatever that is, I don't want to go into speech, but sincerely, from me to you, I lived around Rochester a long time, and that thrilled me too.
Oh yeah.
You know, many years ago, like you live long enough, you've seen stuff come and go, and things are actually much better in many ways. But years ago, I was a little part of a project before cell phones and all this stuff, before internet, that gave inner city Black kids cameras, Super 8, to take out and make a little movie and then bring back and write a script for it. That thing has been done numerous times over different eras of technology. It's a wonder, everything you're doing. I just bless you for it. It made me personally, you uplifted me. And you were doing that for everybody you contact, all the kids. Good luck.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stan.
Thank you. Could I speak?
Please do. Yes.
Yeah. So thank you so much for sharing. It was wonderful. I'm joining from Toronto. So I here also in Toronto, there are a number of organizers and wonderful people such as yourself. I'm an immigrant, as you probably can hear from my accent. But I've been exploring and learning from a lot of them. I have probably a very general and repetitive question for you, if you would like to address it.
Yeah.
Because you work in different media and you are bringing them together. So, what do you think the main difference? How would you think the main difference be between, let's say, page poetry or literary poetry and spoken word? And do you see these two as having, let's say, two different functions, or do you see them as two different facets of the same art?
I would definitely say that I see them as two different facets of the same art. But I think that part of that comes from my understanding of poetry historically. Because I didn't grow up in poetry classes, the poets that I've heard, the first poets that I listened to and heard of were known for some of the work that they were doing in page, but also the ways in which they were speaking. So I think of Lucille Clifton. I think of Maya Angelou. I think of Amiri Baraka, or even like Asada Shakur or James Baldwin. These poets who were at the same time, fighting for their lives. So like it was a part of themselves that they would, not only did they write, but they also spoke and they also lived. And I feel like I guess the phrase would be, we're constantly arting. We're constantly creating. Even in the way that we wash dishes. I wholeheartedly believe that I have an art to the way I wash dishes. You know, it's like there's a certain way I do things. There's an art to the way that you wash dishes. There's an art to the way we read books, the way we consume and create art, the way we do. And all of that kind of allows us to see it in a way that they're different facets. They're different facets because I tried for a long time to, like, when I would try and separate the two, I found myself being dishonest in a certain way. Like, oh, this is how a spoken word poem should sound, or this is how a poem on the page should look. And I found myself like trying to remove a part of me that on either end that existed. And then once I was able to kind of in my mind say like, no, these are facets of the same thing. It allowed me to be more honest in my writing and more honest in my performance.
Great, because like 2 years after I landed in Toronto, I actually started a reading series, a poetry series. And one of the things I did, and I did it consistently, I featured spoken word poets along with so-called page poets or literary poets, because I found that the scene was so divided and I couldn't understand. I really thought that these two groups really need to learn from one another.
Yes.
Like, we're missing on that. And it kind of, in the long run, it also like influenced my own way of writing and performance and everything else. Yeah, I agree with you. I think you say what I heard you say is that, poetry has an urgency to it.
Yes.
And that's what makes it a poem, the piece of art made of words that is urgent and speaks to something that is important. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you. And like I said in my book, I didn't even mention I have a book of poems. It's not even on my bio anymore. I was like, man, I don't even put it on my bio anymore. I'm terrible. My manager would be so upset. One of the things that I say is poetry is honesty in its truest form. So I'm like, in whatever ways that I can be honest, whatever ways I can be honest, that's what the goal is for my work. And that honesty is a lot of times a revolutionary act. Like we say, like love is a revolutionary act a lot of times, like doing those things. So yeah, thank you so much for that question too.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
And I see the people in the chat. Thank y'all. I see them as they flash across the screen. Y'all are awesome. I've been noticing a few. I know that my camera suddenly disappears when I like click into the chat, but I want to let y'all know that I'm seeing your messages as they pop across the screen, and I'm appreciative for the kind words that y'all are giving. It really means a lot. It honestly does.
I believe he had to go, but William O'Daly, who's the Pablo Neruda translator and a fabulous poet, said, so inspiring to hear your work and your thoughts that go right to the bone.
Thank you.
Your description of what it takes to go beyond and the way we need to imagine and hold those images regardless of what comes. Word. Thank you. Yeah, I wish he could have stayed. He's a lovely soul. You would enjoy talking with him. And let me see who else is here. A lot of times we get to the very end and some people who are usually willing to uncloak themselves are willing to do that now. Does anybody else want to say hello before we close out? Marie Bell, Andrea, anybody else? Don't have to, it's just a good chance if you'd like to.
Hey, this is Andrea Doré. Just want to say hello, Jahman. Thank you. It's been a really hectic couple of weeks for me. I've been moving and I was able to sit down and focus, and I feel much better about everything now. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'm glad that I was able to be a little bright spot. I know moving and everything is hectic. Trust me, I've done a lot of moving in my day. So I understand.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming. Let's see who, Pencil Fox, Marie, would you like to say hello before we go? Won't make you, just an opportunity if you want to. So Thank you. And I'll be watching your work, and I doubt that you'll ever need, my low-tech letterpress with all of your high-tech digital. But if there was a way for us to collaborate, I don't, I have the original Copper Canyon printing press that Sam Hamill started, Copper Canyon. So it's from 1912 and it weighs 1.5 tons. And I printed a lot of poetry broadsides for different people. But if there was a way to collaborate some way in the future, I would love to. I would support your work in any way. And just thank you so much. Carmel lost her dad, her papa, the executive director of our organization. The service was right before your reading. And I know it was hard for her to miss your reading. She was looking forward to it, she and her husband, and I know that their daughter comes to many of the readings. So on behalf of them too, I want to thank you. And the reading will be on YouTube, and it will be on the writingforpeace.org. And thank you.
Thank y'all so much. Thank you so much. And y'all have really been just like, icing on the cake. A wonderful day that was just made even better. Both the icing and the cake. Y'all have been both the icing and the cake. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you. Take good care. Thank you everybody for coming.